right, so we are preparing to live stream. Let us know what your favorite dessert is, or your favorite boba flavor. Or if you're not a dessert or boba person, let us know what kind of designer you are and where are you in the world. And this event will be live streamed on YouTube, and you'll be getting the recording along with more resources in the email you sign up for Luma afterwards. So make sure you sign up for that email. With that, we're so excited to have y'all on. We have over 200 people on Zoom right now, and all of y'all are still coming in. So we're super, super excited. You're so thrilled to join us with Minjun today. Welcome. And I'm Grace. I founded Design Buddies back in April of 2020. Since then, we have blossomed. We have hopped to our milestone of 25,000 members. And we host a lot of fun events with a lot of friendly guests like Minjun, and having a lot of resources to help you level up your design career. No matter where you are in your design journey, whether just starting out, mid-level, senior level, we try to have a lot of resources to help you elevate and level up together in your design career. And this is Fluffle, our friendly buddy mascot. And I'm Grace. I founded Design Buddies. And full-time, I'm a product designer at Electronic Arts. And I see some of my friendly coworkers in this chat. So thank you all for tuning in. With that, I'll also, during this chat, we'll start with a presentation, and then we'll have a group photo and a way for Instagram story, and then Q&A afterwards. And during this time, definitely connect with Minjun, connect with Design Buddies on social media. If you find anything insightful from our event, we really appreciate if you share on social media, tag us so we can reshare as well. And we also have a networking sheet where you can connect with Minjun and other buddies as well. So we all can connect with each other, and you can send each other a personalized LinkedIn invite saying you met through a Design Buddies event. And I see some of my friendly coworkers in the chat. So hello, Trisha and Alistair. With that, I will hand the floor up to Minjun.
Hi everyone. Let me start sharing my screen so we can start over. Can all of you see my screen here, my presentation decks? Okay, sounds good. So hello everyone. Thanks for joining this event. Yeah, let me do a quick intro. My name is Minjun, and I'm currently a UX designer at Amazon. So today I'm just really happy to share what I learned and the tips, learning, and all these kind of mistake I have ever seen, especially for the junior designer they have ever made for designing the portfolio presentation decks. So today, the presentation, obviously the topic is around how to designing winning portfolio presentation decks for your incoming interview. So the first thing I want to say is all opinions I'm going to share on these presentations, my own personal opinion and reflecting on my personal interview journey is not representative of my employers. So that means it will be a really honest conversation to talk about what I learned from all these portfolio presentation I did when I was interviewing with this different company, and hoping by the end of these sessions, you will have a basics understanding about what do we expect to do, what do we expect to prepare, and what kind of actionable feedback or tips you can take when you are designing your own portfolio presentation decks for your incoming UX design interview. So here is a few agenda I want to set up in the very beginning. First, I will talk about my journey, and then I will share the portfolio presentation overview, tips, as well as the basic structure. And then I will talk about some common interview questions. I see a lot after you presenting your portfolio presentation. And then I will also talk about some common mistakes I see a lot of younger designer they made for their portfolio presentation decks. And we will use in the end of 10 to 15 minutes to answer any question you have about UX design portfolio presentation decks, and any interview for the presentation itself as well. So let's talk about my journey first. I got my master's degree in human-computer interaction design at University of Washington, Seattle. So during my time at UW, I built up a foundation in UX design and research. However, because my master program was 1 year, very intense like school program, so we didn't have any chance to do like summer internship. So after graduation, I have to looking for my first UX design job. So the first one I end up with was I was a product designer at an early stage startup company in Boston. And after I working at this startup company for like 6 months, I got a chance to move into a bigger company, which was Wayfair. So I was a product designer at Wayfair, working on the fulfillment center, where I designing all these like device and tool for our fulfillment center employee to drive the efficiency. Last year, I got the chance to interview with Amazon, and I landed the offer with my current team, which is a global prime experience team. So right now, I am the UX designer at Amazon, working on the prime experience, where I designing this end-to-end experience for our prime member to help them understand the new benefit, discover different benefit, and stay connected with our membership. And outside my works, I am a big cat lover, and I have a kitty. His name is Kirby, and I just always stay with my cat at home currently, enjoying this kind of happy moment. And outside my work, I also love like food and coffee. And since working from home, so I have to like cook a lot at home. I also love to like explore like different like local authentic coffee shop with my friends during the weekend. So let's jump into our like topic today. So the first session will be an overview about the portfolio presentation. So the first thing I want to say, the portfolio presentation is really, really important for your interview. This is something I learned after I actually did a lot of interview, because in the beginning, I will mention later again, in the very beginning of my interview process, I only have my online portfolio to present, to talk about my case study, which didn't work out really well. And after I did a lot of mistakes, and I learned that it's really important for us when we start our job searching. It's really important for us to prepare our portfolio presentation decks for your case study, because like every company, from this like startup company to large company like Amazon, Facebook, Google, all these companies, they will require you to have the portfolio presentation or portfolio review with the hiring manager. And definitely you have to have the portfolio presentation decks to present when you have the on-site interview, the on-site final interview with this company. So I always treat the online portfolio like they will help. If you have the online portfolio, that is great, because it will help you to get the ticket into this actual like interview process. However, after you already go into this interview process, the online portfolio is less important than the portfolio presentation itself. So the portfolio presentation is a key for you to get the offer from this company, because basically every time you are going to like pull up your portfolio presentation decks to go over your projects. So it's very, very important to present and prepare your portfolio presentation. So firstly, I'm going to talk about like how to choose your projects. So based on my experience, usually like we will have like 30-minute, 45-minute, and 60-minute an hour long portfolio presentation, depending on different companies' requirements. And usually like during either like 30-minute, 45-minute to an hour portfolio presentation, you are going to ask to prepare or present 2 or 3 projects in total. And during these like 2 or 3 projects, here is how I will be select what project I'm going to present. So firstly, for the first project, usually I will select like end-to-end, larger scope, deep and complicated project I have been done. And in this way, I can show that I am the UX design, product design journalist. Basically, I have a broader range of the skill set from visual design, interaction design, like collaboration, storytelling, and get alignment with the cross-functional team. So basically everything that they are looking for as a UX or product designer. So for the first project, I will be showcasing this type of skill. And the second or the third one you are going to prepare will be very different from the first projects. So for the second project, usually I will select the smaller projects, or I will only talk about a part of a larger project I have been done. And if I got the chance to present a third project, usually I would choose like some like funding project or side project I have been done. So for the second project or the third project, I will be focusing on showing my superpower. Like what is my superpower? What is my strength as a designer? For example, sometimes I will only present the mobile prototyping projects because I want to show my superpower as a UX designer is to be able to create a lot of interactive prototype to visualize the idea. So I choose this kind of project to present as my second project. Or sometimes I will be going to present more like the journey, the system like map, where I want to show I am a system-driven like product designer, where I can zoom out to see the entire ecosystem and work and run this like design workshop to get alignment with the cross-functional team for the entire journey map. So depending on like what is your like specific like superpower and skill set, or you can select this specific skill set to highlight during your second or third projects. So this is the strategy I will share if you are struggling with choosing like what kind of projects to present during your portfolio presentation. And following up, I'm going to talk about like the first advice I want to say is always checking with your recruiter about how many projects you are going to present, because it's always depending on the company and the team's requirement. Sometimes they only require you to present like one, or some company will require you to present two during 30 minutes time frame. So always checking with your recruiter about like how many projects you should be prepared in advance. The other things I will say, like treat your projects as a full cost of the meal, because which will lead into my third tip, like shared different flavor for these different costs, because usually I won't treat every project the same way or in the same depth, because I want to show the different flavor. I want to show different complexity. Especially for the first one, it will be a meal where it's like you basically run through everything and talk about like research, this kind of end-to-end project. But the third or the second one will be a little bit like fun or small and easy to digest. It's more like the dessert, like matcha ice cream, like we have after this bigger meal. And the other common questions for the portfolio presentation is around what tool I'm going to use into designing this portfolio presentation itself. So basically here are three tools I recommend. Like first, like Keynote, which I use a lot for all of my presentation, like interview presentation decks, as well as this like virtual event portfolio presentation. I always using the Keynote. The second is like Google Slides, which is a really great way for you. If you want to share the slide with people, you definitely can choose like Google Slide. The third one I see a lot of designers they are doing right now is using the Figma to designing slide. So you can pick up whatever tool you feel very comfortable with, or you feel very familiar with, pick up which tool you want. It doesn't really, it doesn't influence the end result. And then I'm going to talk about the second part, which is the basic structure and the tips for the entire designing, how to designing the entire portfolio presentation decks. So firstly, I will say for the basic structure, here is a couple of like key session or key slide I will definitely have for my portfolio presentation. First of all, it will be in the cover slide, the agenda slide, and then I will have my introduction slide. And following up, I will have this like project 1 or project 2 or even project 3, a few slides for like each of these projects. And I will be dive deep into like each slide or each session and talk about like what kind of specific like content I need to include in each slide. So the first one is obviously is the cover page, the cover slide and the agenda slide. So for the first like ever cover slide, you can make it really fun with like illustrations where I did for these presentations. I have an illustration with my name, and you can add your job title like UX or product designer on your cover slide. And after the cover slide, it will be the agenda slide. And you will have a couple of item you want to talk about on this agenda. Usually I will have like introduction, project 1, project 3, project 1 and project 2, and then the Q&A session. So for this cover and agenda slide, what I want to emphasize here is to always like set up expectations in the very beginning, because I see a lot of designers, they didn't have any agenda slide. So they directly go into the intros or go into their project. It will make the interviewer super confused about like what is going on, like what do I expect during the entire like 45 minutes or an hour portfolio presentation, especially for this remote interview. Setting up your expectation for your portfolio presentation decks is super important. And the second thing I want to share is always ask your interviewer, ask the design team, ask your hiring manager about when is the time for them to ask you the questions. Because usually for the portfolio presentation, you will have a lot of like question coming from the team about like what is going on for this project, like why do you select this design or why do you select this methodology. So when you have your agenda slide already, make sure you ask them their preference on when is the time for them to ask you the question. And here's another thing I want to say is, based on my experience, if this is a one-on-one portfolio presentation with a hiring manager or with a senior designer, usually like they are prefer to ask you the question along the way. It will make the entire presentation more like interactive and more appealing for this individual like interviewer. However, if this is a group interview where you are going to present your portfolio presentation decks with the entire like design team, like 5 or 6 people, usually they will leave the time in the end of after you already presenting your portfolio, presenting your project. So it's the time for them to raise up their hand and ask you the question. But definitely like checking with your interviewer to make sure that you guys align with what is the best time to ask you questions. So after you have like the cover slide and agenda slide, it's the time for introduce yourself. And this is something I also find a lot of designer, they didn't know they should introduce using the time 3 to 5 minutes to introduce their self during this portfolio presentation. But I think a lot of time like having such introduction slide will really help the interviewer understand like how did you get into UX or product design? What is your background, your education background, or what is your previous like work experience and current experience, and what is you always show like what is your superpower or strength when you are sharing out your design story, design journey. And the other thing is you can make it a little bit fun by talk about like what is your hobby and what is your interest and personality. So for this introduction slide, I also have a couple of things I want to share. The first one is do your own research about this company and about this specific role, because even it's an introduction slide for you to talk about yourself, but always remember that the 3 to 5 minutes is really valuable time for your entire presentation to showcase yourself, to showcase like how you can connect the dots by talking about what is your past like work experience, what is your education background, help you to become who you are, help you to become a product designer today, and what is the transferable skill set you learn from your current past experience can be taken into this current role, can be taken into this company. So that is the reason why I in the first tips, I talk about do your own research to know about like what is the company mission and what is this team looking for as a UX or product designer. The other thing is because this is the introduction slide, it's more like icebreaker for the rest of like 40 or 50-minute presentation. So trying to think about what is the way for you to make it really creative, to make it really personal, to make it to have a really like first impressions on for your interviewer. So trying to just bring something fun into your introduction that will help you stand out as well. And then so after we talk about like cover slide, agenda slide, introduction slide, it is the time for us to talk about our projects. So here's come to the most frequently asked question, like how do I present my project? How do I present my case study during the portfolio presentation? So let me introduce my project framework I basically use for all of my presentation, portfolio presentation. Where I will have 4 sessions. The first one is project overview. The second one is the project background and design process, as well as the outcome. In the first couple, a few more slides, I will be dive deep into all these specific sessions and talk about how you can present your case study, present your project during the interview. So the first one is when you talk about your project, make sure that you have a project overview slide, which means in this slide, you are going to talk about like what is your role, what is your responsibility, and what is the team structure. Like these are like PM, engineer, or brand designer, like legal partner, like all these like cross-functional partner you have ever worked with. These are their role. And also talk about what is the timeline for this project and what is the overall project goal. And the other things is also really important for you to mentioning about like what is the current project status that have it is this project like being launched like recently or is still the in progress work. So after you have this like one project overview slide, and then and then after this one is the time for you to introduce the project background. So for the project backgrounds, I will say like here is a couple of the following up slide I will have, which is the user story, a user research slide, where I will be talk about in a very high level like what kind of research, user research, discovery research I did, what is the research activity I have ever did, and based on this research activity, what is the user problem and user pain point we figure out after doing this research. And then it's also worth for us to mention what is the business or product goal, what is the business problem, business goal, and product goal. And then also trying to talk about what is the metric, what is the success metric look like, how did you define the success for this project. So this is the project background, and here I also have a few like tips for you to prepare the project background. So the first thing I want to say, don't spend like too much time in this part. Don't prevent yourself about like always talking about the research, always talking about all this project background in a very detail in this beginning, because especially if you are the UX and the product designer, the most important thing you should be focusing on is the later session, which is the design process. So don't spend too much time on this part, the project background, about especially the research part. And you have to know about like how you are able to show some high level knowledge while avoid talking too much detail, like too much like detail, like especially if you are working on this B2B area, sometimes really sometimes the designer, they will talk too many detail about the product background about the project itself. However, from the interviewer perspective, they don't really care about this detail. So you have to know about like how to show this high level knowledge in a concise way. So after you talk about like the problem, user problem, like the success metric, like project goal, like business problems, it is the time for you to talk about your design challenge. So here is basically here is the framework I'm using a lot during my design process, where I always list out like here is couple like design challenge, and then I will be able to talk about the solution, my iteration process, how I can solve this specific design challenge. And the reason why I love using this kind of design challenge 1 plus solution, design challenge 2 plus solution framework is because usually we will present like 2 projects during the on-site interview. So for the first project, basically I will talk about like 3 design challenge in total, so I can show the entire like storyline. However, if this is the second or third story, usually I will be pick up just 1 design challenge, which is the most like challenging design challenge I'm going to talk about for the second or third project. So during the design process, there's a couple like advice I want to share with all of you as well. So when you are start to think about like what is the design challenge I want to talk about, it is the time for you to ask yourself, what is a challenge you have ever faced, you have ever met during this project, during this process, and how did you deal with this challenge? So before you start to do anything, before you start like creating a slide for your design process part, definitely like just grab some like paper and just randomly just write down what is the first thing coming up into your mind. What is the first like challenge coming up into your mind? Usually the first couple one will be in the most challenging part you should be highlighting during the design process. And the second tip is sometimes it's also about like adding such kind of emotion, adding this kind of feeling into this kind of design process. So definitely you can try to ask yourself, how do you feel about the work? How do you feel about the project in general, and where is your passions? So for example, when I was working on when I was designing my project for my Wayfair warehousing like projects, a lot of time when I was doing this slide, I find my passion was about designing at the intersection between physical and digital space. So I'm trying to find what is the challenge and how I can show my passion with the challenge during the design project, during the design process for designing at the intersection between digital and physical world. And then the other tips I want to share is remember that this is the time, this is your time. So you are the hero, and you always share like your most like memorable like story. Always share like something you think is most like challenge, most memorable to this interviewer, because we are all the human love the story, right? And then the other tips I want to say is, when you are talk about any like design iteration you have ever made, always talk about the rationale. Always justify your design with the design rationale, with the evidence. So basically what I mean here is how you are going to iterate the design based on this customer feedback, user testing feedback, or any like user insight you have learned from your peers research, from your user testing. So when you justify your design decision, always bring this user research data as the evidence. The other thing is, I see a lot of like student designer or young designer, they will be able to talk about their design with this user testing result or with this usability testing data. However, like a lot of time we actually ignore the fact that during the design process is also the time for us to share these collaborations and communication story, because it's not about like for the portfolio, entire portfolio presentation, they are not just looking for the hard skill, like visual design, interaction design. They are also looking for like your soft skill, like communication, storytelling, and communication. So here's come to my next advice. When you are talk about this story during your design process, when you are make these design decisions, have you have any disagreement or have you have any conflict with your PM, with your engineer, and how did you make the trade-off between business constraints, technical constraint, and also the user needs? So an example I always share is, for example, there is I done 3 different like iterations, and the iteration A is something user really like and user feel that one, the iteration A is easy to use. However, when I'm presenting like all these 3 ideas with my team, my engineer feel like it's really difficult for us. It's really time consuming for us to build the iteration A, the option A, because we don't have any existing design component we can leverage. So they prefer the other, like maybe the iteration 3. However, like maybe the UPM have another idea or another thought, and they have some like business requirement you need to consider into your interface. So at this moment, how did you make the trade-off between all these 3 parties' opinion? Maybe like after the meeting or after this discussion, you went to your decks and you explore the other options. That is the final option. You get alignment with your team. So tell this kind of story during the design process will help you stand out as a UX or product designer. And then, so after this design process part, be sure to talk about the outcome. So for the outcome, here are a few of the things you can talk about. The first is, especially for the student project, sometimes it's really hard to gather some business metric, business outcome, but you can still use some of the like feedback or the user code, positive user code from your user, like after you like complete the final design, you did the testing, so like they provide some very positive feedback to the final design. So use their user code as an evidence to talk about the outcome, to talk about the result. And if this is a project you're working in the company, definitely talk about the success metric, like how much like maybe like this increase like 30% in the user retention or user acquisition. So always bring back this success metric when you talk about the outcome. And also, it's also the time for you to share what is your key takeaway or what is your reflections in terms of like the UI, visual design, like interaction design process, or the design communication or collaboration. So always talk about your reflection and key learning as well. And sometimes, like if you have some next step you want to mention, you can also talk about in the last few slides about like what is the next step for this project. So basically, like this is my suggestion for the overall, like how do you structure the portfolio presentation and what kind of framework I'm using to talk about each project. And after we presenting like the intro, your projects, here's come to some interview questions. So in the next sessions, I will be talking about a few of the interview questions I summarized based on my own experience. After like I talk about my portfolio presentation, here is a few of the very common questions I have ever encountered during my interview. So the first one is the background questions. Sometimes the team will ask you like, what is your superpower? What is your strength? And what is your weakness? Or what is your opportunity or growth areas? And sometimes they will even ask you the question is, why this company? Why do you interest in this company, in this specific product design role? And the other part of the question they ask a lot is the visual and interaction design. And feel free to like take the screenshot of this example question, because this is the very common interview questions you will have for after you presenting your portfolio. So feel free to prepare this question in advance before you go into this actual interview session. So for the visual and intention design part, here are a couple of things. Like, what did you work with existing design system? And what is the hardest interaction design problem you have ever had? And how do you simplify the complicated workflow? And what is your rationale for this iteration, this idea, or any tool? And why did you choose this specific method, tool, iteration idea over others? And sometimes they will also ask you, have you ever considered other approach, other methods, or other directions? So this is some common question you will have for visual and intention design part. And then, like I mentioned earlier, is also the collaboration is also something they will evaluate a lot during the portfolio presentation. So they will ask you the question about what is your role, how who did you work with, and how did you work with PM engineer, how did you work with the design team, and what if you have a conflict or disagreement with your cross-functional partner, and how did you hand off the design with the engineer? And again, if you set up your first project overview slide really well, you will be sure to talk about your role, your responsibility, and the team structure. So usually if you have such introduction slide for your project in the beginning, you won't have so much, you won't meet the first question like what is your role and how do you work with other, but you will definitely have some question around collaboration and dealing with the conflict with your PM engineer after you presenting your project. The other part of the question I have ever encountered a lot is it's all about your self-awareness, your attitude. So what would you do differently if you have more time to work on this project? And is there anything you would like to improve for this project? And what was the most difficult part of this project? And did you have any unexpected finding or surprise or even learning for this project? So that is the time they want to evaluate how you are as a UX designer could reflect yourself, reflect this project, and how are you going to take what you learn even from the mistake you have ever had for this project, what you learn from this mistake, and how you can bring your learning into this new team, these new projects you are going to work with in the future. So here is a common interview question. And then the next part I will be talk about is some common mistake I see a lot of, especially a lot of junior designer they ever made. So the first thing is no presentation decks. So this is definitely something I had in the very beginning. I didn't know I should prepare the portfolio presentation decks during my especially during my on-site interview. So I pull up my online portfolio and I basically just talk about everything, I read about everything on my online portfolio, which didn't work out really well at the end. So definitely prepare your portfolio presentation decks before going to these interview sessions. And the second mistake is focus too much about the methodology. So a lot of designer, they will just have a three-diamond diagram or any process diagram and talk about the methods or this kind of their methodology or their approach to the design process. However, they don't talk about the story, any specific story or example. They only talk about I did research, I did blah, blah. So this is not a great storytelling. This is not a great way to show who you are and what you did as a designer and how did you contribute to this project. So don't focus too much on the methodology part. The other thing, again, I mentioned is no example or no story or no evidence to talk about. You only say, so in the beginning you say I am the designer who are skilled at interaction design. However, during the entire design process, I never see any interaction design exploration you did or any prototype you did to show you are the designer who are skilled at interaction design. So definitely bring the story, bring the example into your portfolio presentation decks. The other thing is share so many detail people don't care about. I think this is the hardest part for the designer, because sometimes we don't know about when is the good time for us to just show the high level knowledge, when is the time for us to dive deep and we can introduce more detail. So this is something that I definitely encourage all of you to practice it with your friends, which I will mention later on, is when you are talking your project with your friend, ask them that what is the most important part, like what do you remember most after my presentation? So they will give you their suggestion or opinions on something they enjoying a lot, but you can definitely think about, would you like to like delete a part of the story or tell less about some less important detail you mentioned in the portfolio presentation? And then like make it like a product pitch. This is something I often see, like a lot of designers, they say like, here is a few like feature, blah, blah, blah. However, they never talk about how did they get there? How did they iterate from A, B, C, D to the end of the final design? So they always talk about like the project that feel like this is a product pitch, then your portfolio presentation. The other mistake I want to emphasize here is a lot of time because usually the UX design is obviously the teamwork, the group project. Sometimes it's really hard for us to, sometimes we will just go into say something like, for this design process, we did blah, blah. For this research, we did blah, blah. However, remember that portfolio presentation is the time to showcase yourself, to showcase your contribution, to showcase how you impact the process. So definitely avoiding using too much like we did blah, blah. However, trying to using the wording like I did something, or I helped to do something, or I collaborate with someone to do something. So in this way, the hiring manager will understand that what is your contribution, what is your role in this process. The other thing is I will say is there's treat this portfolio presentation decks as another project. A lot of time designers, they don't bring the visual design, or they don't design their portfolio presentation decks, which will also showcase like your design skill as a designer. So definitely be prepared for your visual design, trying to make all these things consistent across your presentation decks as well. So to summarize what I talk about for this entire presentation decks, I think here are a few like advice I want to talk about in the end. The first is practice. I think the practicing is so important for every designer, especially they want to bring the great story for your portfolio presentation. The second is always be looking for feedback from your friends, from your family, from your peer, and from your mentor, because it's the time. So good stories always coming from like gathering the feedback, and always coming from iterate your portfolio presentation decks based on the feedback you got from others. And remember that we are the human love story. So interesting story matters even more than ever, especially during this kind of remote interview process. And show your learning, show your mistake, and show what is your struggles, and what was your challenge during this process. So bring this kind of emotion and feeling, real emotion and real feeling into the process. And the other thing is just use more visual, like use emoji, use GIF, use illustrations, use any like image like you're gathering from the process. The last thing I want to say is just be confident. Be confident when you are presenting your design work, because no one in the room understands the project better than you. So you should have such confidence to presenting your design works and justifying your design decision. Last thing is, thank you so much for listening. I hope this presentation will help you to prepare your incoming portfolio presentation decks. And I'm looking forward for like any question you have around designing the portfolio presentation decks in general.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. We all loved your illustrations. I saw in the chat and also on Slido as well. If you have any questions, definitely please submit on Slido. we're gonna do a group photo now. So we're gonna do a wave like our Instagram story. So we have a few moments for everyone to turn on their camera, and then we'll have Q&A right after for y'all to upvote each other's questions. We have so many questions, so make sure you really upvote the one you want to answer the most. And then Minjun will be sending me some questions to include in the email afterwards, so or some resources to include. So we'll have that available as well. If anything you found insightful, definitely share on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, tag Minjun, tag Design Buddies. We'd love to hear what you all learned about today, and like and comment on it to give y'all more visibility in the design space as well. And through the whole time, you saw me with my phone. That means I was taking some Instagram stories, sharing some of my takeaways on Design Buddies Instagram stories. So make sure to check that out too. Oh wow, we have so many buddies here today. So I'm gonna count down 5 seconds. There's gonna be multiple pages, so just stay with me. And feel free to bring in any props you want. I always bring in my bear, a very nice bear, but if you have any fun objects, feel free to bring them in as well. I should send them in the beginning, but I'll count down 5 seconds for y'all to grab any objects you want and let y'all know when I'm taking the camera to shoot. I also got this bunny from Spline, so I'll have the bunny this time. All right. Yes, Jack, we're twinning. All right, 5, 4, stay smiling for all the pages. 3, 2, 1, say fluffle or say portfolios. All right, stay smiling, gotta get all the pages. Awesome, I'm gonna do a wave for Instagram story. So this is just to say hi to everyone. So we feel like we're in the same room. All right, ready, set. You can wave, you can dance, you can dab. This is on our story, so you can see some examples. All right, ready, set, wave. Hello, buddies. We are here with Minjun on how to design a stellar portfolio presentation. You should definitely check out the recording if you missed the event. A lot of interesting, really great takeaways were shared, even some common interview questions. So make sure to catch that. And with that, we'll have Q&A. So I guess since we have so many questions, we can just start with the first one, which is, what should you put in your portfolio if you're new to UX design and don't have experience working on design projects? I know during the chat, there was also a lot of questions about what do you do if you don't have like metrics, and how do you show the outcomes and impacts of your project?
So the first question is like, what if I'm not like working in this company, like what kind of project I'm going to select for your portfolio presentation, right? So when I start out, I use my school projects plus my side projects as my portfolio presentation project to talk about. So basically, like the first project will be like end-to-end larger scale, which is the project I'm most proud of. So I show it as the first project. And the second project actually was my school project. So the first one is my side project. The second one was my school project, which I did the VR design. So I only talk about like how did I run this user testing for our VR prototype during the limited time and the resource. So I only choose a part of the story I'm going to talk about for my VR project as my second project. And from the second question, what if I didn't have any success metric, or I can mention about. So I think that is a great time for you to actually challenge yourself to think more beyond what you learned from the school. Because this is also something I learned is help me stand out from other like junior designer is when I was doing my side projects, even I didn't have any like product manager or any like business owner I'm working with, I actually just do my own research about like this domain, about what is like the most common like customer metric PM focusing on, and talk to my like design mentor or any other like people who are already working in this company, ask their opinion about the success metric. So even this is not the real metric I have for this project, but I will mention that here is the metric I think it will be helpful for us to defining the success. So you can show like you have such attitude, you have such potential to learn and explore and do something outside your comfortable zone. So I will encourage you to do your research and trying to think about if this is the industry or real world project, what kind of metric you are going to measure in the success.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely also ask the interviewer questions like, what metrics do you use? It shows that you're really self-aware and willing to learn. I love that. And also all about the impact, showing metrics, showing your impact. Our next popular upvoted question is, do my projects have to reflect the industry? For example, film and entertainment. I like to work in just the skills. So yeah, I'm sure this is also a common question people get is, how do I match my skill sets in the industries?
So that's a great question. So I think if you have working with like client or just any like team, like cross-functional team in any other industry, definitely talk about like you have ability to like drive the impact, drive the influence with your cross-functional team. You are really collaborating and openness to feedback, and you do a lot of like project that drive the alignment with the cross-functional team. Definitely like talk about this. I think the soft skill is something that is most like commonly used if you are working as any like project manager or any type of the role in the previous company. And the second part is also sometimes also works for you to emphasize you like areas. Because, for example, if you are working in the film like industry before and you are currently interviewing with Netflix, it is worth for you to show that you are so passionate about the film industry. So that is the key reason why you think yourself is a great fit for Netflix product design position. So think about the skill set and think about the areas, product areas. And the other thing I will say is, if you are working on like very like complicated like business areas or complicated product areas before, always talk about like you have the ability to think big and also zoom out to see the entire ecosystem, and you have ability to simplify the workflow, and you are really passionate about this kind of complicated challenge, complicated product domain. This is also something you can mention as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I definitely use that. I just use my interest in games to get into EA. So there's that too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So that is a great point. Is if you are working in this company, like sometimes you might find some connection between your interest and hobby to this specific like company, like product areas. Definitely connect it, bring it together will help you stand out. Yeah.
Yeah. Work is about enjoying what you do too.
Yeah.
And our next question is actually twofold, is where do you create your lovely illustrations? I would love to know as well. I'm sure a lot of us like to learn how to illustrate better too.
Yeah, so I was using like the Photoshop and Illustrator to do my illustration. Depends on like what kind of like fidelity I want. Yeah, I use like Photoshop and Illustrator.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's a lot of great questions. I'm trying to pick a few that really answered as many questions. If you see any you want to answer, feel free to just shout it out. I'm just going through the Slido. Make sure you upvote each other's questions too. Oh, another great question is, I know I'm going to try to merge a few, but sometimes it's better to usually show real world projects. And in your internship, sometimes they have a lot of NDAs. So what are your recommendations to be able to use internship projects if a student is an intern trying to get into full-time and they're trying to use that internship project to interview and have like NDA stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So so for me, like I usually present a project that is already launched, and I don't present any like super NDA project, which I means like if this is just a like product vision, like the company set up for like 3 or 5 years, like roadmap, definitely don't present such project, because first it's hard to get some sort of user feedback, and second is it would be a red flag for you if you present such like super NDA project. Because right now I'm not quite sure about like what kind of NDA project you have, because if you have your NDA project, like it's okay for you to put on your online portfolio with the parts work. And sometimes I see a lot of designers do is they actually just talk about the learning or the process in general, and mention it. This is the NDA project. If you want to learn more about these projects, definitely reach out to me at blah, blah, blah. And during the online portfolio, during this kind of portfolio presentation session, I think it's it's okay to present like the NDA project, but usually it's more like not, because I think this is some boundary between the NDA. The NDA means here is not something that's super like product vision or like super like secure, like you basically cannot tell everything. But for the general project, I think it's okay to talk about it during your portfolio presentation. Yeah, but correct me like if other have any other opinion.
Yeah, for me, I just ask, is this okay? Just like get permission, like written permission from your manager and stuff to share.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I had to wipe out all my metrics and stuff. So
yeah,
it depends. Those are great questions. Trying to pick a few that will answer more at the same time. Oh yeah. How should my portfolio presentation? How different should my presentation be compared to my portfolio case study, and how many slides? I think that was asked multiple times. I know it's like it depends a lot. But maybe give a guesstimate.
Yeah. So for me, like I treat the online portfolio is just a like quick overview about what I did, and who I work with, and maybe I will fill out a few like design challenge like in a very high level with the outcome. But for the presentation decks itself, I think it is a great way for you to dive deep, to talk more about like this kind of struggle, like real world struggle, like your emotion, your feeling during the process. But to be honest, like as you become more senior product designer, it's not really important for them to have a like well-established like online portfolio, but they will spend the time to working on the portfolio presentation decks. But for how many slides I prepare, this is another like it's hard to answer, because for me, like I prepare, like if I talk about like everything, I'm trying to bring more visual, and every of the sentence I have is I will have one slide for 1 or 2 sentences. So one slide just 5 to 10 seconds. So I will have a lot of slides for my portfolio presentation decks, but it always depends on your like personal like preference. But be sure to apply this kind of basic structure and frameworks to your portfolio presentation decks. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. We have a lot of questions. Just to vibe check, are you okay with going like a few minutes over time to answer more questions? Okay, cool. Awesome. There's one that's highly upvoted, is how many years of, I know it depends, but it's really upvoted, so that's why I want to ask, is how many years of experience does one need to become a product designer, as most of them don't say it's a junior role. So I guess to reframe this, what would be your advice saying that people who may be transitioning from other fields to design, and how to look for these roles?
So when I searched for my first UX design job, full-time job, I didn't have any the industrial experience in UX at all, but I will just apply like not just the junior or associate product designer role, but also I will be applied for this designer role with 3 years experience, because there's no harm for you to just apply online, because sometimes the people, they do interest in your like background, in your maybe in your past experience, they will interview with you even you are not like qualified for like 3 or 4 years experience. And the other tips I want to share is try using different title. So you can try to use like UX designer to search on like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed, and also you can use like interaction design or product design as a keyword to search, and it will pull up a lot of different like result and position.
Yeah, definitely. The job descriptions of all these interaction, UX and product, they're all pretty similar. And speaking of interaction design, this was also another highly upvoted one, is what would be an example of an interaction design problem? So I'm assuming this is like a design challenge they would give, unless someone would like to clarify.
So what is the interaction design challenge? That's a great question. So let me think about the example. So if like you are designing for the search result, like how do you like think about the information hierarchy, and how did you just like filter out, how did you design in the filter for the search result, and what is the, if you have a CTA on the search result, like what is the next page look like, and what if like if we don't have enough like data, or if the user don't have the Wi-Fi, if they are opening up this stage, what is the edge case and what is the empty stage for your interface, for your design. Yeah, so I think that this kind of specific like transition between the steps, transition between the page, and also like what we will bring user into the next screen, like what if they click on this button, what we are going to show up, and what if we have the arrow or edge case. So I think all these things could be the intelligent design problems or challenge. Yeah,
that makes sense. Definitely think about the flow, the user journey, what kind of steps they want to take to achieve the goal for that, the interactions they would face, interaction design. Sorry. Yeah, there's a lot of I feel like maybe we could go for like maybe one or two more, if that's okay with all of you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. There's just a ton of questions. If anyone wants like to unmute themselves, feel free to do so as well. But yeah, since we're kind of short on time, I think I'll just go with the Slido actually. One is asking, I still haven't found my niche inside the UX realm. How should I structure my portfolio? Because I feel like I feel like it's a common thing where people like want to get their first experience, but they don't know what they want to specialize in.
So for the online portfolio itself, it actually, you don't have to have so many like UX design projects. You just have to have like 2 or 3 really like really like sort of for like UX design project. You really just think about basically everything for your design decision. I think if you have 2 or 3 projects, it's definitely a good starting point for you to apply for the role. I think the common mistake is like people want to include as many as project, and they think they want to have so many projects in order for them to get a job. But actually, like, because I mentioned like for the portfolio presentation, we just need to have 1 or 2 projects, usually like the 2 projects in total, to get a job. So if you transition into the UX design, definitely focusing on creating 2 great portfolio pieces for your incoming interview.
Yeah, I love that. I'm sure a lot of our buddies will find that helpful too. So that was like me before too, and I was like, I like everything. I think I'll do one more question. Maybe you'll end with, is there something you would tell your younger self as a designer that you weren't able to cover today? I would like to end with that question.
Well, that's a really great question. I can say a couple points. The first one is, I think that your career is your own responsibility. So no one will prevent you from growing up or leveling up. So it doesn't really matter for like what is the first or second or third company you are going for. Always bring your like growth mindset into your career, will help you get into the destination you want to be, or any company you want to work with. The second one is knowing about having such self-awareness, knowing about what is your strength, superpower, and also knowing about your opportunity areas as a designer. Because if you want to work in this like larger company, usually like they are looking for someone who are the journalists. So which means you have to be really good at basically everything, like visual design, intelligent design, communication, collaboration, storytelling. So you are not lack of any like skill set I mentioned. However, you have something really stand out, which maybe like you are really good at mobile prototyping, or you are really good at storytelling. So having such like a broader range of the skill set you are comfortable with, and then you have a superpower you can empathize during the interview or during your work. The third thing that I wish I know is like, don't be afraid to ask for help, and always looking for by building such like mentorships and looking for your own mentor, because I think I learned a lot when I was doing my side project or when I was doing my portfolio presentation decks or online portfolio. I'm always looking for advice from the designer who are working in this industry for a couple of years, which I learn, okay, this is something which from their conversation, I learn about this is something like the company or the hiring manager they are looking for. I didn't learn from my school. So definitely like building up your network and looking for your design mentor. The last piece is always like just follow your heart. Like I think a lot of people they are struggling with like maybe like which industry will be like trending like in the future. But I actually don't think about this question because I just want to do the product design world. I want to designing for the people who are underserved by the technology. So I don't really care about like this kind of like what is the trending or what will be the future to be. I just enjoying the process of like what I'm doing currently. So just follow your heart, yeah, and you will be basically know about everything, and you will know like what you to do, what you are going to do next. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Definitely everything's a learning journey. Sometimes you might feel stuck where you are right now. Where you are, it's not something you want to be doing forever. You still learn that what you're doing is not something you want to do. I feel like this is something like I need to hear a while ago as well when I was studying like engineering, not design. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your takeaways. Definitely plus 1,000 with self-awareness, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, being able to communicate them, super, super helpful in life in general and also in design. With that, I'm going to stop streaming on YouTube. So bye, YouTube buddies. This concludes our wonderful event. Definitely. Oh, Minjun also did a talk with us earlier. It's called What I Wish I Knew Earlier in My Design Career. So I dropped that link before, but I'll drop it again in the chat. So make sure to check that out. It was back in June. So make sure to check that out as well. And if you have anything that's really stood out to you during our event, make sure to share your takeaways on social media, on LinkedIn, tag Minjun, tag Design Buddies. We'd love to see what y'all learned from this experience. And